when we think about the digital maturity model, including SMS, when should brands start to leverage some of the strategy we talked about today? What's typically your advice on this?
Yeah, so at Bounteous Hathaway, we actually have an entire growth marketing maturity model. And so channels is actually one of the 9 facets in the maturity model. But essentially the way that we use this is actually to calibrate, technology investments that brands are making and how that translates into comp growth for their business. And so we did an analysis looking back to 2019, and we looked at brands all across the restaurant space that have loyalty programs and don't have loyalty programs, and just looked at, what types of investments were they making in digital technology and marketing and how that's translating from a comp growth perspective. And so all of this feeds into our growth marketing maturity model. And so as we're having these conversations with clients, we find that different clients are looking to basically move at different velocities. So we have some that are more, crawl, walk, and then we have some that are more, just starting out, but they want to move at extremely high velocity and move up this maturity model very quickly. And so, it has 5 different levels that brands sit at, and you can be different levels in different facets of the maturity model. And it spans everything from acquisition strategy and how you're acquiring customers across all of your channels. It has a whole category around CRM strategy and execution, and that contains things like segmentation, content personalization, and channels. And so that channel piece is where SMS fits in. And really looking at, what channels are you leveraging today, how coordinated they are from a strategy standpoint, and also how coordinated they are from a technology standpoint, which really feeds into another area of the maturity model, which is all around technology and automation. And so, helping our clients identify the right partners to power their strategy. So, we consider Attentive a leader for SMS and it also integrates well into many of their existing technology platforms, which is super helpful and really effective. And then the last piece of it is really around like the measurement, reporting, and ways of working and how advanced the client is on measuring performance, having visibility into the results, and then how much they're actually using data to power their strategy, as well as a test and learn culture to be able to push the program forward. And so a lot of the ways that we use this tool are actually doing like a quick audit of where you are today, but also have discussions around where you want to go and how fast you want to get there. And so we partner with clients to build a roadmap for, how to get you there, where and when to incorporate SMS into that strategy if they don't already have it. And if they do, then helping to maximize the value of it based on all of the existing technology that they already have.
That's I think a lot of valuable information. I think I've seen you and Bounteous Hathaway go through this a few times. I think you could probably do a whole masterclass on this, honestly, and we should maybe start taking some subscriptions and running our side business. The masterclass on digital maturity. I'm sure someone's going to make it now. I think on our side, there's a lot of things that I think we have in common in terms of kind of your approach to it. I think with SMS specifically, a lot of times we get this question of like, hey, should I do this now? Should I wait? When is the right time? I have all these different projects happening. And I think typically what we see is if you have online ordering in place, you're kind of ready to go, at least to start with. I think oftentimes the mistake we see is someone is hyper-focused on building their app, building a new website, building a loyalty program. And these are really critical initiatives that are really important for restaurants. But some of these can take 3 to 6 months to develop, right? And oftentimes a lot of folks, while they're working on that, they put everything else on hold. And we've seen that some of the best strategies and results are, taking advantage of the short-term kind of gains with SMS. So getting some sort of opt-in going, driving some immediate revenue from the channel with online ordering. And then once the app is ready, loyalty program is ready, we open a new store, whatever it might be, actually using this channel, this engaged audience, going back to that emotional connection to promote kind of the new channels, right? I think a lot of the clients we've seen that have the best results in terms of other initiatives have actually started first by having some sort of easy first-party opt-in like SMS, getting people into the funnel, and then using some of the subsequent messaging and strategies you talked about to promote the longer tail projects, right? And I think ultimately all this is going to be incremental, right? Like the first day you do SMS, it's going to look a lot different than the 6 months and 12 months down the road. So I think it's just a matter of these small micro improvements over time but there's a huge opportunity cost. I think a lot of folks forget about when they're working on one project and think that they can't multitask on other projects as well. I know location's a big part of this, Nick. We talked about this, right? Especially when it comes to the last mile experience. When you think about, geofencing, kind of different ways you can leverage platforms like Radar, where does this kind of fit into the maturity model? How do you typically guide customers through it? When to think about it, what sort of progression to take on the channel and things like that?
Sure. We do think about a location maturity model at Radar. One thing that's interesting is it's kind of different depending on industry, right? So if you're, a seed stage startup building the next Uber or the next DoorDash, you might be investing in really sophisticated, geofencing and location tracking from day one. If you're, an upstart, fast growing QSR brand, you're probably going to start somewhere different. So I think typically what we see is, one of the first things that you build into an app is a store locator. There you need things like address autocomplete, location search, geocoding. Later we see folks progress to more advanced use cases. So, location-based arrival detection for order ahead, maybe some location-based messaging like we've talked about. Maybe that's with background location permissions once you've sort of built up user trust, and on-premise mode. So, are you elevating things like contactless payments or a loyalty program when you're in store? And elevating things like order ahead functionality when you're not. Beyond that, you can potentially go even more sophisticated with location. Maybe you're doing order firing or order sequencing based on location. So actually automatically kicking off the preparation of an order or sequencing orders based on how far away somebody is from the restaurant. Maybe you're even bringing, some delivery capabilities in-house to sort of avoid paying that, DoorDash tax or whatever you want to call it. And maybe there are some location tracking capabilities there. So that's how we think about the location maturity curve. I think part of what we're trying to do at Radar, and this is true for restaurants, but it's also true across industries, is to kind of shift the curve a little bit and say, hey, there are these really incredible location capabilities that you might think of as a nice to have in the early days, or you might think of as later in the maturity curve, but actually kind of say, no, this is dead simple now, pull that forward. How can we help you think about this from day one? And, sort of change perceptions about like what's possible, what's table stakes at your stage. Part of that is really flexible infrastructure and developer tools for some of the biggest brands that have in-house engineering or digital teams. But we also want to unlock these types of experiences for smaller, upstart, growing restaurant brands as well. A big part of that is partnerships. So we do a lot of work with Hathway, Bounteous, their Nom platform. We have a partnership with Olo, which is a really great order management platform that I'm sure folks are familiar with. So we have a location maturity curve that I think has been the historical one, but a big challenge for us, a big opportunity for us is how do we shift that? I think at the end of the day, SMS, geofencing, all these great capabilities, it's really all about delivering seamless, convenient experiences. Consumers are going to stick with brands that deliver those seamless, convenient experiences. I think more and more of the stuff is going to become table stakes. So how can you be one of the early adopters? How can you set yourself apart? How can you use great platforms like Radar, like Attentive, to avoid reinventing the wheel and focus on the parts of your digital experience that are truly unique to you. So that's kind of how we think about the location maturity model at Radar.
Nick, what would you say is typically, and I'm going to put you on the spot, like what's typically like the most common first use case or kind of problem customers are using Radar to kind of solve?
Yeah, I mentioned that one of the first use cases in the maturity curve is often a store locator, right? Yeah. And historically, that wasn't something that we did. And we actually had a lot of our restaurant customers ask us, hey, you're already storing all of our restaurants as geofences. You're already powering these other great location capabilities in our app. Can't you help us power a store locator as well? So we launched search and geocoding APIs. it might be the first thing you build, but it also gets tricky and complex as you scale. Google Maps APIs are expensive. We have a lot of restaurant customers that are paying Google Maps an arm and a leg, and we're looking to Radar to just sort of say, hey, I want to standardize on one location platform, geofencing, trip tracking, geocoding, bring it all in house. So
yeah. No, that's interesting. I think it also, I mean, I think we all agree there's some sort of incremental improvement and sophistication over time. But it also seems like a lot of it also goes back to the question of like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What part of the life cycle you're trying to focus on? Because if it's, making sure that first time buyer is happy, it's the last mile experience. If it's getting your loyalty user back into it, maybe it's some sort of notification as they're walking by the store, right? Or some sort of reminder to redeem their coupon and some sort of loyalty point, things like that. So I think the moral of the story is it's going to be incremental, but you got to kind of think about what are you trying to solve today versus 6 months versus 12 months of your journey. All right. We're getting to our final pro tip. And this one, again, is about, we talked a little bit about when to kind of get into different types of initiatives. I think with SMS, we think you should start early. I think ultimately, if you're spending any money on driving traffic to your website, to your locations, in this example, to your Instagram site, you're presenting with that opportunity to actually convert them to first party opt-ins, right? It's a huge opportunity cost if you're driving people to the funnel, driving to the website, and you're not finding some sort of way to optimize that top of the funnel and get these first party opt-ins. All right, we've come to the last topic for today, and I think it was an incredible conversation. I'm sure we can talk about these for hours, but we've got some time for Q&A. So if you haven't already put your questions in the Q&A box, please submit them right now, and we'll do our best to actually go through in the next few minutes. All right, Nick, the first question I have is for you. What is one of the most clever or unique examples you've seen a business in the restaurant or relative space use Radar for?
Sure. There are lots. I think the one that comes to mind is everything that Panera is doing to launch their next generation bakery cafe. So we're helping Panera power everything from location-based arrival detection to for curbside pickup to potentially other types of unique in-store and drive-through experiences as well over time. So I think that's one example. There are a number of customers, and we're going to be publishing some case studies soon that use Radar for all sorts of really sophisticated order firing and order sequencing. For example, you place an order for curbside pickup, and you're 5 minutes away, and the fries are dropped in the fryer, right, and they come out hot and crispy when you arrive. Really seamless, using some of our pre-built integrations for these capabilities. I think pretty soon, gone are the days of pulling into a parking lot, kind of questioning where do I go? Do I go in store? You're sitting there waiting for 10 minutes, and food quality is disappointing when the food shows up, and wait times are high. For Radar Attentive specifically, Radar and Attentive together specifically, rather, it's a new integration. I think there's some really exciting stuff in the works. So my hunch is there'll be some case studies coming soon. Stay tuned. Amir, I think you mentioned earlier that SMS can be really powerful when something is immediate and you need to really get somebody's attention. And obviously, real-time location is a great input to that. So more to share there soon.
Yeah, I think one of my least favorite things is cold, soggy fries. So I think the time thing is perfect for that. All right, our next question. We'd love to hear some best-in-class examples of SMS campaign messaging that promotes app downloads. Well, we could probably talk about a lot of these. What I would say is make sure you guys go to Text We Love. It's a website we have that includes a lot of customer examples. I think some of the ones that I think about are kind of two different strategies. We have one customer where everything they want to do needs to drive app downloads and loyalty enrollment. So they're using our SMS channel to get that first party opt-in and then using communication. But everything that the user needs to redeem actually has to go through the app. So they're using SMS to get that first party opt-in, using the immediacy of the channel, but they're still driving all their transactions and engagement through their app because it's a big investment and they know people are stickier when they use the app. So I think that's one example I really like. The other example I like is we have customers who are actually just using an SMS audience and then promoting the app as there's some new initiatives. So sometimes there's app-only promotions or secret menu items. A lot of folks, when they refresh their loyalty program, they also relaunch an app. So we've seen some brands actually use those campaigns to actually re-promote the net new app or updates and things like that. So again, it's a little bit based on your strategy. I think the best one we've seen is having a really wide top of the funnel and then using segmentation, behaviors, last active channel to kind of basically decide on which thing you promote next. Ellen, next question's for you. You mentioned how you use purchase data and kind of what you guys work on. Are you talking about like purchase data from the brand or like third-party data outside the four walls of the brand?
Yeah, so when I was referencing it earlier, we're talking about for purchase data from the brand itself. And so because we're, using the loyalty program, we have a lot of that data. It's easiest to activate. Now, that being said, we do work with clients to expand data and do like third-party data appends and things like that when it makes sense. But we usually like to start with that first-party data because we find that's the most effective. We've also done some things to go a lot broader from like a consumer research perspective and just understand like where customers are buying, what are their lifestyle activities. And sometimes a lot of that is feeding into like marketing and segmentation strategies outside of a lot of the data that we're capturing on a purchase level from the brand. And so there's lots of different ways that we're capturing and activating that data. But when I was referencing it earlier, it was definitely from the loyalty aspect.
Yeah, nice. And Ellen, while I have you kind of connected to this, so what are some of the tools that you use for actually measuring, campaign results and specific segment responses, right? Is it something Hathaway has proprietarily, or is it kind of just, Google Analytics, Ola Analytics? How do you guys actually look and measure all this stuff?
Yeah, so we actually have an analytics and intelligence department that's actually doing a lot of the campaign analysis. They can actually build, custom segmentations and models for a lot of our clients, but are also doing that campaign level analysis across all the various channels to understand like what the overall impact is from a marketing perspective, and also informing and giving the strategy team insights into where we should be going next to maximize the value.
Nice. And I think this is also, to your point, integrations really come into play. So I know one of our most popular integrations at Attentive is with Olo. And the first kind of phase of that integration was attribution specifically for this, right? So being able to actually not just use unique coupon codes and things like that give you more reporting, but also being able to actually send a message, promote something in an Olo ecosystem, and then actually see the reporting and attribution on the actual dashboard itself. So again, there's a lot of different ways to, look at reporting, right? There is RFM models, you can get into data science and things like that. But I think some of the things you guys do at Bounteous Hathaway is pretty incredible. All right. One thing I wanted to dig into is we talked about integrations. Nick, I know you guys are really kind of expanding your integration ecosystem as well. Obviously, we're building something together, but I think Olo has come up a lot for us, especially in the restaurant vertical. I want to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing there with the Olo integration.
Yeah, definitely. Excited to answer this question, Mayor, because I know you mentioned Olo a couple times, and they're also a great partner of ours. We see them as the leader in their space, and we've been working with them for a while. But what we announced recently was a new integration for order firing specifically. So basically, the way it works is order is placed, that order is created in Olo. A trip is automatically started in Radar, which will track the customer's location and their live ETA as they come to pick up the order. And then ultimately that can actually fire the order, trigger preparation when the user is or when the customer is approaching the restaurant. So super exciting stuff, kind of going back to this theme of seamless, convenient experiences, decreasing wait times, improving food quality and ultimately, stronger customer lifetime value. I think in general, integrations are key. I think we're seeing, some of the smartest restaurant brands kind of composing a stack of best-in-class tools that are all really, really tightly integrated. The Attentives, the Olos, the Radars. We have partners in other categories as well, CDPs like mParticle. And Segment, analytics platforms. And I think you can bring all these together and deliver these types of really seamless experiences. I know Ellen and the folks at Hathaway think about sort of having a best-in-class toolkit as well. So thinking about a extensible, well-integrated set of tools that kind of equip you for the future and whatever use cases you might decide to sort of build against or pursue, not just this quarter, but also next year and 5 years in the future is really important.
Yeah, I think this also kind of touches on another question we have that's kind of relevant is ultimately, do people use Attentive and SMS for post-meal collection of feedback, surveys, online reviews? And I think this goes back to part of its integrations, right? Being able to integrate with Olo and other systems to send transactional messages. So we do have a transactional API that helps us fire off a lot of these purchase messages, but we also have a lot of like automated journeys. So we have coupon reminders, coupon nudge reminders, and then we also do post-campaign messaging. We do integrate with some of our partners who do surveys and feedback. A lot of times we do post-purchase promotion of an app or something else. So I think a lot of it comes down to creating that journey that says, all right, once they actually pick up their order, what do you want to happen next? Do you want them to give you feedback? Do you want to tell them about your loyalty program? What's the next call to action? But to answer the question directly, we are definitely working with a lot of brands that are actually doing post-purchase messaging as well. This next question I think is probably relevant for all of us. We got about 6 minutes. I think we should have enough time to get through it. How much time per week does like an independent restaurant need to really dedicate to some of the channels we talked about? I know the question was kind of aimed around SMS marketing. I think in terms of how much time you need, it depends on how sophisticated you're getting, but I think smart solutions like Attentive should be able to help you automate a lot of it. So the list collection, the welcome flow, the compliance, the first purchase order. And then, we have CSMs that actually do a lot of hand-holding and help create different marketing calendars. So we have customers as small as like 3 people, single operators that are running the program themselves, to really large organizations who are doing it themselves. And then I'm sure, Ellen, there's a lot of vendors that actually work with you guys and you guys help manage those programs. So from your point of view and Nick's point of view, how much time do you think these individual restaurants need to dedicate to managing these channels?
Yeah, I mean, we see all sorts of different organizations and layouts. And as far as like how teams are structured, we do find that a lot of times it's a pretty small team on the client side that is actually running a lot of these programs. And so that's one of the reasons why a lot of times they bring in like a Bounteous Hathaway into the picture, is because they need to scale. And so it kind of goes back to that growth marketing maturity model too, and the velocity that you want to move. And so the brands that are okay, kind of moving into that crawl phase, I think that there's a lot of automations that can actually help, make it super efficient. But ones that are really looking to move at that fast velocity, kind of helping from, a strategic perspective, but also an implementation perspective, and then a measurement and iteration perspective too. That's where we see it being most effective.
And Nick, on your side, we'd love to hear maybe kind of the second part of this question as well. Like, how much time does it take to manage? And ultimately kind of go back to the maturity, like what needs to be in place to be able to actually use something like a Radar? Obviously, you want to have app and location, things like that. But talk to us about both how much human power it takes, but also what sort of like table stakes you need to even be able to use something like a Radar.
Sure. I don't know if I have too much to add beyond what Ellen said in terms of time per week spent. I think I would just underscore the fact that there are a lot of great partners and patterns out there to follow rather than reinventing the wheel. So I think working with Bounteous Hathaway, who have done this with proven success for other brands, when the timing is right, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? In terms of requirements to use Radar and kind of going back to the maturity curve point, so Radar does need to be installed in a mobile app to work. Now that could be your own owned mobile app. That could be one that somebody like a Hathaway Bounteous develops for you. And increasingly, we're being built into white label apps as well. In terms of location permissions, you can do a lot with just foreground when in use location permissions. So the store locator use cases that I mentioned, the on-premise use cases that I mentioned, and even a lot of the, you might think that some of the location tracking and live ETAs for curbside pickup, for example, requires background tracking. It actually doesn't, depending on how you do it. And I think most of us are used to, punching in a destination on Google Maps or Apple Maps, starting navigation, seeing that flashing blue bar up top. Uber is doing this now too. If you share your location with the driver, you can background the app and you'll still see that flashing blue bar, and you can do that only with foreground permissions. I think it's a common misconception. So if you've built trust with users and you get background permissions, you can do all sorts of sophisticated and thoughtful targeting and triggering as well. But only foreground permission is required for a lot of this. And I'll stop there because I know we're coming up on time.
No, I think that's critical. Again, it goes back to those given permissions, right? So, all right, I know we can go on forever, but we are going to get cut off in 2 minutes. But this wraps up the discussion for today. Just a huge thanks to both Nick and Alan for joining us and sharing your expertise and insights.